Now we will move on to the hotel. I know we have Mary O'Connor here. I think Jim Doherty is on as well. Thank you folks for coming back. I see that we don't have anything new from you and where, and so Mary, go ahead and let us know where things stand and what Mr. Doherty's intentions with the project is.
Good evening to the members of the board, Mr. Chairman. I represent 1211 Mass Ave Realty Trust. You do have my letter, which Ms. Raitt has put up of May 11th, dealing with a number of the zoning issues. And if I can just address several of them, because I think they are pertinent. One of them is the use of the property. This is a mixed-use property. There was some discussion that it was not a mixed-use property because the hotel was a dwelling. The definition of dwelling specifically excludes hotels and motels. Specifically says shall not include. So this is not a dwelling. It is lodging and comes within the mixed-use definition. With respect to the bonus FAR, I had provided it, the calculations to you in January. However, Jenny mentioned to me that you don't have them on the plans. We will get that to you. With respect to the parking, it is the sum of the two uses. As you know, there's a 2,800 square foot restaurant proposed for the first floor. But under Article 6.110C, I would suggest to you that the 2,800 square feet of restaurant space would not be included in the overall parking calculation. It is the first 3,000 non-residential spaces exempt. So what you're looking at is 50 parking spaces, one for each hotel room, and you have the ability to reduce the parking to 25%. What the proponent is proposing is 28 spaces, so we're looking for a reduction to 56%, well within your authority. But most importantly, and this is something that you have town council's memorandum to you dated May 13th, concerning 5.3.17. As you know, it was the wrong definition. It was the wrong vote that was inserted in the bylaw, that it is the step back is from the third floor. It's a fourth floor step back. It's not a third floor step back. And I think that Attorney Heim has suggested that to you, and you are bound by the vote of town meeting as that issue. That was raised, Mr. Benson and Mr. Watson both expressed concern whether they had the authority to give that fourth floor step back. I would say to you, there is no dispute now as to that issue. So that segues into the additional information. When we left in January, that issue as to the step back, the fourth floor was up in the air. It was of a concern to Mr. Doherty. The project would not likely be going forward if there was not that step back. So he did not expend any additional funds to prepare the traffic study or the like until that issue was resolved. I would suggest to you that issue was resolved and has been resolved by Attorney Heim. And based on that, and assuming that the board accepts the representation of town council, Mr. Doherty is prepared to complete what Ms. Raitt has pointed out in her memorandum of May 14th that is necessary for you to have all the information you need with respect to this project. So if you have any questions, but we don't have items 1 or 2 for you for tonight's hearing.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that update, and hope we can move forward on a faster timeline at this
Andrew,
point.
if I may point out one thing, there is a concern. We have called 2 traffic consultants. You know, with school out of session, this presents a unique issue with respect to the traffic study. There may be other ways to collect that data by getting numbers of sensor as to how quickly that could be done in light of the COVID situation. So we have that to deal with. But you will have a complete traffic study that will also address pedestrian and bicycle safety.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Couldn't find the unmute. Couple of things. First, I think there are two different issues related to the upper story setback. The first is the one that Attorney O'Connor referred to regarding whether the step back needs to start at the third or fourth floor, and we do have town council's advice regarding that. The other issue, which is the one that I think Jean and I were both concerned about, is whether the depth of the step back can be altered from the 7.5 feet called for in the zoning bylaw, because the applicant has proposed kind of splitting multiple step backs on different floors in order to meet the overall requirement, and it wasn't clear to us whether we actually can allow that. So that was the other question regarding the step back. I'm glad to hear that the applicant is prepared to move forward with a traffic study, not just of the hotel, but of the wider area that it is situated in, particularly since there was just another bicyclist fatality at the Mass Ave Appleton intersection near the
Thanks,
site.
David. Go ahead, Gene.
That was all I had for the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your letter, Attorney O'Connor. I just wanted to respond to a few things in your letter, which I think might help inform what's going on. First, as far as the step backs on the fourth floor rather than the third floor, yes, we did receive the memo from town council, and I believe that, I'm bound by his legal opinion that even though the current bylaw as published says third floor, the correct way to look at it is town meeting voted fourth floor. So I agree that his opinion to us resolved the issue of which of the two floors the step backs should be on. I do have some other concerns about your letter, and I'll just say them because for me at least, I would like to see them responded to when you give us all the other materials that you haven't provided yet. The first one has to do with the bonus FAR that is being asked for. In addition to asking for the actual calculations, I would like to know what the square footage of is proposed to be for the public access space, because it wasn't clear whether that was part of what you were going to be giving us. But I did want to see
That's correct. We
what
will-
that see as part of it. And if you could give us a draft of what the public easement would be, I'd like to be able to take a look at that also. So that's one thing. Second is on the setback, not the step backs, but the setbacks. Your memo or your letter says the bylaw does not require a front yard or a side yard setback, yet as I read the bylaws, because you're on a corner with Clark, you have to meet the requirements for what the front yard setback would be on Clark, which is 20 feet. And while we can waive that under our authority, I would like to hear from you about why you think the hotel is not subject, not now, but in your letter back to us again, why you think the hotel is not subject to the 20 feet setback, because on Clark, you have that setback, it's an R2 zone. And secondly,
Andrew, can I interrupt Gene for one quick second on that one point there? I did do some research on that. Is that okay, Gene?
Can I finish and then interrupt?
Sure.
And if we do have that requirement and you want us to waive it, tell us why what this is some condition that's unique. Not simply that this is a hotel, but why it's unique enough that we should raise it. So sorry, Ken, go right ahead. Interrupt.
That's all right. On Clark Street, that's considered a front yard setback. And and the building behind it is also a corner lot. There's also a front yard setback. And according to the zoning, front yard setbacks, there's an exception in the zoning says that it could be an average of what existing buildings are at. So I actually went out and guesstimated what the setback was for the building behind it was from the front yard. I'm saying it's probably 6 to 7 feet. So where they're taking the average, they're taking that exception in the zoning so that they're meeting that requirements. Is that correct, Mary?
That's correct. And there's actually a much more complicated legal argument that I can get into in a letter when I send it to you as to why I don't think it's frontage. But I don't disagree necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think it's frontage either. I don't think frontage makes the difference here, but I'd like to see your explanation. And then if we do need to provide an exemption from that, why we should do it. The next question I had related to the parking. What I believe was said the last time, and I would like to see this in writing, that the valet parking will only be for the people who will be staying overnight at the hotel and will not be for the restaurant guests. So I would like to see that in writing, and I would like to see it some way that that's going to be communicated to the restaurant guests.
Mm-hmm.
And those are my my comments on your letter. And then with everyone else, I would like to see all the materials that have not been provided.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. Ken, do you have anything else?
Yeah, Mary, can you quickly go over with me, just bullet points, what you will be providing going forward now that you got this, our review today?
Sure.
I'm just concerned that a lot of things don't get slipped between the cracks.
I think they are all in Jenny's memo dated May 14th. Plus the things that, and she has it up on the screen, plus whatever the board asks for tonight with respect to different explanations. So you have the traffic study, a complete traffic study, and then you have 2A through H.
Okay, hold on a minute. I have all the pictures blocking that. Okay.
And I will tell you, I went and cross-referenced this with the January memorandum, and Jenny has picked everything up.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I think the big thing for me will be elevations.
Yeah, yes, Andy, sorry.
Yeah. Proper, accurate elevations that will really give a good sense of what's out there. I think there are some other illustrative photos that have been passed around and used as gospel, which aren't necessarily the case. Obviously, what we look for is an elevation to judge how exactly the property sits on the site. That's a big thing. That's really the main thing I'm looking for, and the traffic study, of course. So I'll turn it over to Rachel for any comments.
Sure. I would actually ask that you go back to, again, the January meeting notes. There were actually quite a few additional comments that were made about the design of the building itself, irrespective of the setbacks that don't appear on this list from Jenny. And I think that the quality, to Andrew's point, the quality of the drawings, the elevations that we see, being able to address in much more realistic depictions what it is we're going to see, much more akin, quite frankly, to some of the things that were in the package of the mixed-use facility we didn't even get to tonight. I would just like to see the drawings to the next level of quality so that we can really review them in much greater detail, because there's a lot of nuance here. And I think that the quality of the drawings addressing all of the comments that were made at the last meeting need to be really attended to.
Okay,
Thank you.
that was the plan.
Thank you.
Can
Any
I
other comment?
add one more thing, Andrew?
Yep, go ahead.
In this
Maybe-
Zoom, sorry, what you say?
Go ahead.
In this Zoom meeting, it's all new to us. How do we actually see materials? Before, we used to ask the proponent to actually bring in samples of the materials. Are we okay with just like seeing photographs of different materials so we have an understanding of, when they say stone, what kind of stone, what color is it, the texture, that kind of stuff? It makes it very hard to understand that through the Zoom meeting, I think.
So I know that we've had to present materials, and I'll just use my own experience here. We've had to present materials, as architects before in the past. And I think, Mary, what you ask your architect to do is to do a flat lay of the materials and photograph them, along with providing detailed specifications that will describe, to Ken's point, what is the finish? Is it smooth? Is it glossy? Is it textured? Together with those photographs is going to be very important. And again, before it was, this is the kind of material we're going to use. We'd really like to see
Specifics,
this is the color, this is the finish, this is what we're going to be proposing.
certainly.
Andrew, I have one other
Go ahead.
item I failed to mention before. The shadow studies. I'm not clear whether the new shadow studies took into account the change in elevation between the building, the proposed building, and the residences behind it. And I'd like some clarification on that. And also, I was unclear whether the new shadow studies resulted in any shadows being cast on one of the two solar arrays. So when you submit the materials, can you just give us some clarifications
Yes,
on those in writing? I
certainly.
think that would be helpful.
Could I actually pose a question to the other members of the board? Given how important the traffic study is, not only to this board, but also to the neighbors, I'm wondering if we should ask for that to be also submitted to the Traffic Advisory Committee and have them weigh in on this as well, given the challenges of the many intersections surrounding this particular property.
Yeah, Jenny, can we arrange that? Do we have to do that formally, or are they meeting? Can that be done?
So they're actually meeting tomorrow night to talk about that intersection as a result
Okay.
of the crash that happened with a driver unfortunately killing a bicyclist on the roadway, and revisiting a CTPS report that had been done in 2012. I think that this particular traffic study that you're talking about would be very useful for them to review and provide input on. I don't know their exact meeting schedule at this time, but we can coordinate that.
Yeah, I think I
at one
definitely
time.
see that happen.
I'd be interested in knowing how they're going to do this study without real traffic going on these days, unless there was a traffic count done, within the past year, let's say, in that area, that they can use for that. I'm also a little concerned about their traffic study, that the one they submitted so far from BCS Group, because it lists, for example, traffic going to and from the DAV building, which hasn't been occupied in years. So when they compare, what is it going to be now compared to before, they're using compared before numbers that are completely wrong. So I have some concerns about that. And I also have some concerns about how they're going to give us a traffic study without traffic.
Yeah, I definitely share that concern as well, particularly because school is not in session, and I've seen for myself in the past how many students are going back and forth through that area. I also, while I do think it would be very helpful for them to look at that 2012 CTPS report, I would suspect that both motor vehicle volumes and bicycle volumes in particular have increased significantly since then. Given the current situation, it's just going to be very difficult to know where we're at right now with respect to volumes on any of the modes.
They may be able to extrapolate, based on number of students. If we get counts from the school department, there may be other ways to do it. So that's what we're trying to find out.
The only point I was making with that study is that TAC will be discussing that study and the accident that occurred. That would be the only reference point. In terms of how that relates to this project, I think it's somewhat related, but I think it's absolutely, it needs to be updated. And the directive that's been provided to this applicant has been pretty clear that it needs to be further studied. It also needs to relate to the neighborhood impacts. And we did a request back in essentially last July for this issue to be addressed when school started, which was last September. So at this point, due to the current conditions, they won't be able to study that, and either the board, will have to accept what they provide to us, or we would need to further postpone that element of the traffic analysis. But that was the only reason I referenced the study.
Thanks, Jenny. Any other comments from members of the board before I open this up to public comment? Mary, do you have anything else that you want to share, or does Jim want to speak before I open it up?
Not at this point, Jim.
Jim, did you want to share anything? No, okay. All right, so I'll open it up to members of the public. Again, state your name and address, use the raise hand function. We'll work through that first, then turn to the folks on the phone. Again, I appreciate everyone's patience through this time. Challenging to conduct a meeting through a laptop camera. So go ahead and raise your hands. We'll open it up. I think there's not much new to discuss here. I think the chances that we bring this back next month or so are likely, since we've asked the applicant for so much more. But go ahead, Dawn, you're up. Don Seltzer. I unmuted you. Where'd you go?
Okay. How about my video? Thank you. I'm not quite sure where to begin. Let's start with the claim that this is not a residential use. I don't understand the logic that was given. I have provided the board with the section of the bylaws that clearly lay this out. It's 5.5.3 use regulations for business districts. There are about 13 different residential uses listed there, ranging from single family, 2-family, 3-family, etc. And number 10 on the list is hotel motel. That's a residential use allowed in the B4 through special permits. So it seems pretty clear. This is a residential use, and the impact, of course, is that the bonuses under the floor area ratio are not available for residential use under 20,000 square feet. The next claim that was made is that there's no frontage along Clark Street. You might notice I'm talking to you from Clark Street with the property 1211 in the background here. It certainly looks like it has frontage along Clark Street. I don't understand the argument again that was given. If you look in the definitions of the bylaw as to lot lines, you'll find out that corner properties do indeed have two front lot lines, one back lot line and one side lot line. This is a corner property. It has frontage on Clark Street and all the things that relate to yard setback and upper story step back apply to this building. This is something that is of real interest to the people who live over on Clark Street on 26, 28, and 30 Clark Street in terms of shadows. Eliminating this 20-foot setback that is required, the impact on the people living in those at that address is that they're going to have their winter sunlight in the afternoon cut by 50%. They would have 50% more afternoon sunlight if this setback was observed. So it probably matters to them. And it's not just a few weeks or so. This is an effect that's going to last all winter for them from about late October to March 1st. So I think it probably matters to them. And the other aspect is that because it is on a corner, it faces a street, that the fourth floor has to be stepped back also, not just the Mass Avenue side, but the Clark Street side has to be stepped back. And I'm really disappointed that the topographical survey hasn't come in yet, because that's going to reveal all kinds of problems in terms of what the real height of the hotel is. You're going to find out it's not 44 feet, 6 inches or whatever was given, because that was measured simply at the highest corner of the land, and it slopes off both down Mass Ave and it slopes off to the back, of course. And if you get the true elevations, I think you're going to find that this hotel exceeds the 50-foot height limit that the zoning laws allow. And you're also going to find out there are problems on the lower level where the parking is. We have yet to find out exactly how high the garage openings are. I think you're going to find that they're rather small. They're only going to be 8 or 9 feet. It's going to be a real problem for all those delivery trucks that are going to be coming down into there, delivering their stuff, and not going to be able to turn around because they're not going to be able to back out into the garage, and there's not enough turning radius in the parking lot for them to operate. I can go on with other issues, but I think that's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other public comment? Anyone on the phone wish to chime in? Go ahead, Mr. Wagner.
And Andrew and Leroy has her hand up too.
I see that now. Yep. Carl Wagner, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Hi, Carl Wagner, 30 Edge Hill. Oops, let me start the video again. Andrew, can you start my video again?
Yep, sorry about that. Should be on. You should
All
be.
right.
There you go.
It's a weird process. Anyway,
No, we see
hopefully
you now.
you can see me and hear me. Carl Wagner, I live at 30 Edge Hill Road in Arlington. I just wanted to add something for the benefit of people who are here as participants or are watching the recordings. Although I don't mean to impugn the attorney for the developer at all, I think it's strange that Arlington continues to allow people that have powerful positions in town government or related to town government to represent people in front of town boards like yours. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong in this specific circumstance, but it really does bother me that we have somebody on the Board of Assessors who's petitioning you and potentially could lean you in some other case one way or the other. And so I would hope that people who are watching this will actively try and change Arlington's rules on how meetings can happen with town officials representing private parties in front of town boards. Thank you very much.
Andrew, may I respond to that?
Go ahead, Mary.
I am a special town employee exempted and able to represent clients in front of other boards as a matter of Massachusetts law.
I see Lisa Hines. Lisa, go ahead.
Hi. I wanted to just speak in favor of the project. I know there's more material required for the applicant to submit, but sorry, 14 Sunset Road. So as a nearby property owner, I appreciate the investment in the lot, and I would love to see the development occur. So I know that it comes with a mixed bag and some trade-offs associated, and more needs to be understood about the traffic implications. And I share the concern regarding the Appleton intersection, but I just wanted to voice support of investment in this property. That's all.
Thank you. And I see you on here twice, so if I've unmuted the wrong one, you know what, I'm going to unmute both. Ann Leroyer, go ahead.
She's still muted. Oh, there she goes.
Yeah, she's in twice, so.
Yeah, I know. My husband was on the other computer downstairs.
Ah, okay.
And I guess they both came up as my name. So, okay, thank you. Thank you for this whole hearing and everything. I had some questions about starting with Ms. O'Connor's letter. She talks about the bonus FAR. She talks about a public access space for public art and presentation. But so my question, I guess, is that would only really be usable in good summer months. And is that enough of a reason to ask for a 10% increased FAR bonus? I don't quite know all the terminology, but it just seems like that's a limited advantage to the property. And in fact, many neighbors are not even in favor of that type of music or public activity that would be happening there, and with also questions about the hours of the usage of that space. So that's one issue. About the upper story setback or step back, in her letter, she says, this project contains a boutique hotel on substantially unimproved lots. Well, in fact, Mr. Doherty owns the B4 lot that is egregiously unimproved, has full of abandoned vehicles. It's really a junkyard. He has not been a good steward of that space. And so there's a real question about how he would steward this property in the future. And there's also an argument about that in order for this project to be successful, there must be, quote, adequate room revenue. And that has to do with the setbacks and the FAR and so forth. But is it really the ARB's responsibility to worry about the financial success of a project like this? That's a question. Let's see, well, another thing, we've already talked about the traffic. That's a major, major concern for the neighborhood. So I know that there'll be much more about that to come, so I won't dwell on that too much. But it really has to be the full expanse of the Mass Ave from all the way from Forest Street all the way through Lowell Street. I mean, that whole area is just a mess. And you know, the bike rider accident that happened recently is only one of a number of accidents that have happened in that area. So I'm glad that that's going to be looked at more thoroughly. The former Nicola's Pizza across the street on the corner of Mass Ave and Clark is currently being renovated. I think it'll be interesting to see what, once that's open and there's more traffic that's brought into the neighborhood from that business, that will also impact how this whole area is going to be used. And finally, this is for a future, I suppose, but the neighbors are just very concerned about what recourse we might have in the future if this project in some form goes forward and it's not successful, or it becomes abandoned, or it's not maintained properly. what recourse do the neighbors going to have if this, does not really work out the way, it could and it should if it was a good project and not as large and overwhelming as it appears to be. So those are some of the neighborhood concerns that I just wanted to share. And we have a group of more than 30 immediate neighbors who are on a local email list, and that there are more that keep coming into the group, and we're all very, very concerned about how this is going to go forward. So thank you for looking into this further.
Thanks, Ann. All right, Mr. Loretti, go ahead. You are unmuted.
Hello, Mr.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I'm speaking on a telephone, so let me know if there's any problem with the audio. But
no, you're loud and clear.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go through a few legal aspects that I think pertain to this case, and in particular, some of the requirements of the zoning bylaw that I believe the ARB needs to be cognizant of. And the first one is, I believe that the legal notice for this hearing was defective at the start. And that's because Section 11 of 48 of the State Zoning Act requires that the nature of the relief being sought be put into the legal notice for the special permit hearing. And I don't see that there. So I just mentioned that, so you're aware of it. But I'd like to get into some of the requirements of the zoning bylaw that give you guidance on how to consider a project like this. And under Section 1.4 applicability, there's a couple sentences that I think are particularly relevant. One that says, no building, structure, or land shall be used for any purpose or in any manner other than as expressly permitted within the district in which it is located. Well, clearly the bylaw does not permit a hotel in the B2 district, so that criterion is not met. And then that same section goes on to say, whenever the regulations made under the authority hereof differ from those prescribed by any statute, law, or other section of the zoning bylaw or other regulations, that provision which imposes the greatest restriction or the highest standard shall govern. So if there's a discrepancy or an inconsistency within the bylaw itself, it's the obligation of your board to read the most restrictive or take the most restrictive reading of it. The other thing I want to point out to you is decision criteria for all special permits, and this is under Section 3.3.3a. And what it says is, one of the things that your board has to find, it says the determination shall include findings that all of the following criteria for granting a special permit are met. And the very first one is that the use requested is listed as a special permit use in the use regulations for the applicable district or is so designated elsewhere in the bylaw. Well, again, clearly a hotel does not fit that in the B2 zoning district. Now, the applicant has talked about the exceptions to the maximum floor area ratio regulations under Section 5.3.6. And as Mr. Seltzer clearly pointed out, the principal use here is residential. It has nothing to do with whether there are dwelling units or not. The applicable sentence in this section of the bylaw is the lot or part of the lot is not less than 20,000 square feet when the principal use is residential. It doesn't say anything about dwelling units. And clearly, this isn't residential. I mean, the principal use is residential. The lot is less than 20,000 square feet. So this bonus provision doesn't apply. But even if it did apply, it doesn't apply to the B2 zoning district, because if you look under subsection C, it lists the various districts where the bonus provisions might apply, and it's very selective. B2 is not listed there at all, and you can't simply consider a B2 zoning district to be a B4 zoning district. It's not. Indeed, if the applicant or the town wanted to do that, they should have put in a warrant article to town meeting to change the zoning of the B2 lot to B4. The other thing I would point out, and this becomes very clear when you look at what they're doing or trying to do with this bonus provision, is that this project, not only does it not have any usable open space, it completely fails to meet the requirements for landscaped open space. And this section of the bonus provisions that they're trying to take advantage of, further state that the land that's going to be deeded can't count towards meeting the open space requirements, and also that the gross floor area calculation from the amount of lot area is reduced. So we haven't seen any of those calculations, but that was something that was clear from the outset. And then under section 5.3.5, it again indicates that you can't use the floor area ratio regulations for one district and another. When you have two different districts making up the lot, you have to apply them separately. You can't apply the more lenient floor area ratio requirements across the whole parcel. And finally, I'd like to talk about section 5.3.16. This is the yards or setbacks for lots and the ARB's ability to adjust that. One thing I would point out is not only was that relief not sought in the legal notice for this hearing, it was not sought in the application either. So I'm not really sure what business the board has even considering it when the applicant hasn't put it in the application. And finally, I'd like to make a comment about the public docket for this hearing, because it seems to me that public comments, and your board has received numerous ones in writing, are not being made part of the docket. When I go to the website for the ARB, the public dockets listed, it does not include any of the public comments. They are a vital and necessary part of the docket, and I'd suggest that it's actually a legal requirement that they be put into the docket, because should this special permit be appealed, they need to be part of that file. And I notice even for this the hearings for tonight's meeting, there were materials submitted in time, and they were listed under correspondence received. Those materials should be part of the docket. And so I would ask that the board, one, update the docket for this special permit procedure on its website and include everything, not just submissions from the applicant or other people in the town. They need to include, or the docket needs to include, the full listing of materials and submissions from the public as well. Finally, just let me quickly address Mr. Wagner's comment. Indeed, the attorney for this proceeding, I understand, is a special town employee, and that's due to a decision made by the select board. They are the ones that determine whether town employees can be deemed special municipal employees or not. So if people have concerns about that, they need to direct them to the select board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Loretti. Michael Sandler.
Hi there.
Go ahead. You should be able to start your video.
Yeah, I just clicked it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm Michael Sandler. I'm at 18 Pierce Street, and just a couple of comments. With the high school rebuild, and the DPW renovation happening, the former La Licata, or the soon-to-be former La Licata spot, is going to be an undersized space for what the town needs, which is right down the street. In addition, there's a liquor store going into the former Nicola's Pizza. Clearly, we're a neighborhood that's experiencing some transition. It's going to be vital that we have a real traffic study, not a virtual one. This virtual meeting that we're having is not, it's not quite up to what we need as a town in terms of a public forum. Similarly, to move forward without a real actual traffic study with school in progress, without traffic on the streets, I think is that's a real warning. I'd like to thank Mr. Wagner for his comments. The optics of this, have for the last year or so been bothersome to me. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol McDonald, I know you've been waiting a while. Go ahead. Should be unmuted.
How about now?
I can hear you now and see you.
Okay. All right. I don't want you to see me. I'm Carol McDonald. I live at 1192 Mass Ave. Unfortunately, we were there when that accident happened last week. That is only one of many I have seen in my lifetime living in this house. The traffic study, I agree with Ian LaRoya. You have to do one. You should even ask the patrol ladies that do that intersection when school is on. They will tell you how bad the traffic is in the morning and in the afternoon. I don't know if you have asked them about it. Have you, as the committee, approach them on it, about their opinion?
We have not directly, but I think that's one of the reasons why we brought up the option of speaking with the Traffic Advisory Committee.
See, the patrol ladies themselves you should be speaking to. They've had close calls at that intersection that we have witnessed. So I think that is major too when you do that study. And you got to remember, you just can't do a student count. You have the St. James School that has a daycare up there. You have the children's place that always has traffic. And then you have to take in consideration what goes on at the church too, funerals and whatever, when they have processions. So the glare in the morning, the accident that occurred last week was basically due to glare. And you need to do the study at that time of day to understand how that glare affects Mass Ave at that particular area, Lower Appleton Street and Mass Ave. So I don't think anything can go forward without that traffic study before you make a decision on anything. Another question I have is, I mean, and I'm sure there's many people that have lived in this neighborhood as long as I have, but I remember that gas station across the street. And if the tanks were removed, I'm talking about the contamination study, wouldn't there have been a permit those tanks were removed? Because I don't remember them ever being removed from that site. So I don't rely on, I don't know how comprehensive Mr. Doherty's study was on the contamination, but are we allowed to look at that study that he did?
It's part of the record. Anything that's part of this docket is available on the website, the town website.
All right. Then I'm thinking about all these hotels that are being built, and Somerville in Cambridge, 160 rooms, 200 rooms. It's going to have an effect on this small hotel here. I mean, has he taken that into consideration, what's going on closer to Harvard Square versus a small hotel in Arlington? And what would happen if it's not filled? Is he going to rent it out as not a hotel, as a room and board? I mean, what happens when his vacancies, there's too many vacancies for him to bring in income? Are you going to allow him to, you know, rent out the room for section, I'm not putting down section 8, I'm just saying, is there going to be stipulations of how he can run that hotel? That's another thing I would like to know, if it goes through.
It'll be run as a hotel, and if it were to be approved, if the use were to change, Mr. Doherty would have to come back in front of us, reopen the special permit, and tell us why and how.
Okay. I'm just saying, because what goes on in the hotels that are being built down the street from us, I see more people tending to want to go, rent rooms there, hotel rooms there, than coming to Arlington. I just don't feel it's practical to have a hotel in Arlington. It's not the right space. I've been in this neighborhood, and I agree with Ann that a lot of us oppose it. And another question I have, this is going to take a while to get resolved. Why can't you rent out the VFW in the meantime to get some type of income coming in? What is preventing you from doing a short time lease to at least get some type of and come into the town. It's
Mary,
just
I'll let you
empty.
do
The
that.
bushes are growing. Who
That
knows
building,
what looks like inside?
that building is owned by the town. We don't have anything to do with leasing it out. The
So it's
town
just
would
gonna
have to
stay,
do,
so it's just gonna stay empty until you get this resolved.
well, that's the town's choice.
All right, then I'll call the town manager and see what I can do. It just seems it's sitting there and you could at least get some type of income coming in on it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Andrea Dwyer. Go ahead, Andrea.
Hi, my name is Andrea Dwyer. I am at 26 Pierce Street, which is the condominiums directly behind the property on the corner of Clark and Pierce Street. And I am someone who is definitely eager in general to see the property cleaned up. I think we've discussed at length the status of the property and what an eyesore it is. You know, and I have the same concerns a lot of my neighbors have expressed around things like traffic and parking and, you know, potentially privacy of having this many visitors to the neighborhood. The one thing I want to put some particular attention on in terms of my own concerns are the elevations that I know have been asked for and some perhaps for revised images and revised renderings. What I'd like to request be emphasized is being able to picture the property from the back, from, you know, standing on my property and looking towards that property. There's not a lot dividing our property. There's, you know, visually there's one large tree and a low fence. And as a few people have expressed, there is a significantly different elevation level between Pierce Street and Mass Ave. So the property that exists there, while you know, much lower than the property that is being discussed, still looks, you know, quite high up from standing from my property. And so, you know, my major concern is the effect of having a building that is absolutely looming over, you know, my property and in the neighborhood in general. And I've seen the images that were originally created where you look, you know, say coming down Mass Ave towards the center at what the property might look like. I know there are some, you know, questions about that in general, you know, but one aspect of it is that you're kind of looking downhill at it. And I think it makes it look, or even just level at it, but it makes it look smaller than, you know, it would appear from within the neighborhood itself and from within my property. You know, by extension, I know there've been the sort of sunlight studies. There's definitely a major concern that I and my neighbors in the building have regarding, you know, just feeling like this massive building really is over our property and taking away, you know, all of the light and privacy that we have. Yep. So thank you for your attention, and I appreciate the consideration.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else wish to speak about this matter? Anyone on the phone wish to chime in? Mr. Wagner.
I just, this is Carl Wagner. I just want to make a point of order, of question. Wasn't there a woman in the first section who did want to speak? I don't know if she had her comments recorded.
Hi, probably me. You're probably thinking about me, Marina Dardo.
Go ahead, Marina.
Well, I just want to reiterate the concerns of my neighbors. I'm across the street from the Prospective Hotel. I'm at 6 Clark. Traffic may be a real issue. We're right on the corner of Mass Ave, very close by. So I'm concerned about a ton of cars with a very limited visibility. Spoke about it before, so my main point in speaking up is just to, I guess, reiterate the number of people in the neighborhood, and, you know, maybe give us a little louder voice. I don't know what will be the parking situation, because right now Clark is a private street. I would like to know what it would mean in terms of the hotel parking and how tempting it would be to the restaurant guests to just park on our street because there are no visible limitations. And frankly, nobody would ever come and give them a ticket. I don't think that ever happened for other people. But right now it's, it's manageable. When we have 30 cars along the street, it might be less manageable. And the last concern is just to build on what Andrea said, the elevation and the setback of the 3rd/4th floor. I would like to see a better quality drawing that would be more reflective of how the building would really look. That's it.
Thanks for your comments. Thanks for the reminder to bring you in. Is there anyone else who has not spoken, would like to speak about the hotel issue? All right, so I'm going to bring it back to the board at this point then. Yeah.
Can somebody start my video? Someone turned it off.
Hang on. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. I forgot to ask you earlier. Can you confirm that you received a copy of the transcript of the town meeting section, or the excerpt of the excerpt from town meeting at the time that the mixed-use zoning bylaw that was passed that I sent you? It pertained to the question of allowing prohibited uses as part of mixed use, and I had copied the relevant sections and sent it to the board.
We've received
with respect to the
discussion
hearing.
we've had with the town council that have included that, so that we do have that.
You have, and it is made part of the docket.
I will defer to Jenny as to whether that's part of the docket, but it's been received and marked.
Okay, because I specifically requested that it be part of the docket, so I expect it to be made part of the docket. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak about this matter? All right, now I'm going to bring it back to the board. Anyone else has comments about this, they can submit them in writing. I think there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. A lot that's still unknown about this. And speaking as a member of the board, I'm a little bit frustrated that it's gone on for this long, and many of these questions are still unanswered. I understand some of the challenges that are out there with a project of this size and with as many stakeholders as there are. But I think right now we need to pick up the pace a little bit. There are a number of things that we've asked for, a number of things that Mayor, you've agreed to provide, Attorney O'Connor, you've agreed to provide to us. I would like to see those and have this matter back on the docket, back on the agenda within 45 days. And I would suggest that if Mr. Doherty is not prepared to do that, to provide those things, that he let us know so that we can make alternate arrangements and consider what other options might be out there.
I think clearly, Andrew, with respect to 2A through H, that's achievable. I cannot say for certain as to the traffic study until we talk to the traffic engineers to see what they're doing. They may have a system that they're using in these circumstances. So, I think that's achievable for 2.
I think we have, it's a little bit more than 45 days, or maybe it's not, but I think what I'd like to see is this back on the agenda for July 6th. We'll just put these 2 projects together on the same meeting and power through it. I think there's a lot of value to this project, to the town, and to the site in general, but I think there are a lot of concerns that need to be answered by the board needs to have answered, that the neighbors need to have answered, and we need to see some action from Mr. Doherty. So I think what I would do is ask for a motion that this be, unless the other members of the board have anything to say, having heard what we've heard, I think I'd take a motion to continue this hearing to July 6th at 7 p.m.
Can I just say something
Go
before
ahead.
we do that? I think it's probably worth saying, when a lot of people are still listening in, that we've gotten 2 legal opinions from town council that relate to this. One has to do with the step backs and says, which basically says that the step backs should be on the 4th floor, and that the wording on the bylaw, 3rd floor, did not reflect the town meeting vote, which was 4th floor. The other comment or opinion we've gotten from the town council, and I'd like the other board members to correct me if I've gotten this wrong, is that this project, even though it's in both B2 and B4, and part of it's a hotel and part of it's a restaurant, meets the zoning requirements because it's mixed use, and mixed use is allowed in both of those districts. So I feel bound by the legal opinion of town council on both of those issues.
That's correct, Gene.
Thank you.
Andrew, before you vote on the July 6th, if we find out in the next week that the traffic study is not achievable by July 6th, how do you want me to handle that?
Let Jenny know, and we'll discuss that. We have some other meetings that come up before that July 6th hearing, so if it needs to be continued, or if we need to have you back in on to some degree, we can do that.
Okay.
Andrew, if I could just say one thing, I really don't want this to come back to us without the traffic study and without a traffic study that we can all feel confident we can rely on and make some decisions based on. So if it is not achievable, then I think we need to understand what a new timeline is and defer that until this time. I very much would like to continue this discussion and see this project move forward in front of us for further deliberation. But from hearing from all of the neighbors and from what we have all said, I think the most important thing is to have that traffic study the next time we all meet together.
Yeah. So July 6th is probably a reasonable time, and we do need to continue this to a date certain. We can't just continue it indefinitely. So I would suggest that as soon as you have information on whether that will be ready, Mary, please let us know, and we can choose another date.
Sure, I will.
But I do agree with Rachel, for the sake of having these meetings be productive and being able to answer the questions of the neighbors, that the traffic study needs to be part of whatever our next conversation is.
Sure.
And quality elevations. Those are the 2 things that I think are really going to move the needle one way or the other, and a reputable shadow study as part of those elevations.
So I would move we continue this hearing till July 6, 2020.
I'll second that.
All right, so just move down the line. Kin.
Aye.
Rachel.
Aye.
Jean.
Yes.
David.
Aye.
All right, and I vote yes. So this hearing is continued to July 6th at 7 p.m. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
See you then. Be in touch.
Bye-bye.
All right. Very quickly, Jenny, do you want to walk us through director's updates, the next item on the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Just very brief updates, just to let you know that if you hadn't already seen this, we are not back in the office. None of the administrative offices are open yet. We're still continuing to work remotely. We're likely to continue remote work for some time, certainly up until June 1st, but then likely thereafter. And we are not yet sure exactly when the public the town hall will be open to the public. So I think that it's in all likelihood we can anticipate to continue remote meetings through the summer until we have a good sense of how many people can convene in a room, what the room setup will be, and a number of other matters that would need to be resolved for people to come back together. So that was the primary thing that I wanted to mention. And then second to that is just in terms of my staffing, I am on a pretty reduced number of staff. Many of my team are helping with the recovery and response effort right now. So I'm working very long hours as part of that. And I am working as hard as I can in relationship to a number of different initiatives. I think a lot of those things we talked about at my last update. I don't have any specific virtual forums that are scheduled right now, but I will be letting you know about upcoming opportunities to participate in different online engagements. At this point, the only thing that we've been doing virtually are surveys, sharing information about projects, but we have not yet scheduled any sort of formal engagement opportunity as in like a public forum virtually. We are exploring different ways to do that with different projects, but have not come up with a date, which is why you haven't received anything from me. But there are a number of surveys that are posted, including David mentioned earlier, the Sustainable Transportation Plan. That survey is active. We are seeking lots of questions from anybody about what they want to ask us about housing or economic development, and have had a lot of questions come to us so far. We also have a survey that's posted in relation to residential design guidelines, and have had an enormous response to that, like hundreds of respondents. And there's more to come. So we will continue to engage people that way. And I anticipate that there will be other updates in the future, but wanted to just let you know about the office, staff capacity, and how we're engaging right now. Open to any questions.
Yep. Thanks, Jenny.
You're welcome.
All right, so move on to open forum. Anybody wishes to speak, matters will not be acted on, but raise your hand and I'll call on you and give you the floor, the spotlight, so to speak. A few minutes for folks to take care of that. I know there's been a lot of discussion this evening. Thank everybody for being constructive and respectful and putting up with Zoom. Actually, I think it's pretty good. All right. I do not see anyone raising their hand for open forum. Going once, going twice. I'm an auctioneer now. All right. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Kin.
Second.
Seconded by Jean. Kin.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Rachel.
Aye.
Jean.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate everybody's continuing to do this. I actually think this is a pretty good way to go about it. A lot of good input, a lot of faces we don't normally see in person. And I think that's a positive for getting people involved. So appreciate that. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a good Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe, wear a mask, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.